Hi, I'm doing a series on applying and auditioning to music schools, and in my first video, I mentioned that just because you really enjoy and are passionate about music, it doesn't mean you have to make that a career necessarily, and not every passion or interest has to be made into a job or a career. And I wanted to talk a little bit more about that today, as well as life as a musician, but outside of the music world, what it looks like to be a musician, but to explore other passions and interests as well. So I think going a little bit more in depth into what I've already mentioned, I strongly believe that not every passion of someone's needs to be monetized or made into a job. And in a similar vein, when we are musicians and we are pursuing the career of being in music, being in that industry, I think it's still important to cultivate other interests that don't fuel into our job. So, for me, I've learned that I love learning about other subjects. In college, I think I discovered my own interest in nonfiction, so I love reading about anything I can get my hands on, whether it's nutrition or virology in science or experimentation in the lab fields of science, or people's personal experiences through memoirs and biographies. I really enjoy learning about those things. I also really enjoy exploring other art forms, whether it's through language or visual art. I just love an array of different things. I am interested in a lot more than just music, but many of those things have nothing to do with my job specifically. And I think it's important to explore the world, explore ourselves as musicians. So much of music and any kind of art is about expressing life. It's about conveying the human experience, and a lot of that just deals with what we go through, what emotions we process and experience day to day. And I think if we're not able to have a lot of those kinds of experiences or interests, there's no real way to connect with the composer and what he or she is trying to communicate with their music. So I don't think I would be able to understand the grief or darkness in Shostakovich's music or Tchaikovsky's Pathetique if I didn't know what it was like to lose a loved one. Or I don't think I would understand Schumann in some of his music because it's so clear how much he loved his wife Clara and how that influenced some of his writing. If I didn't know anything about what it was like to love, then I would find it hard to connect with him as a composer and to communicate the things in his music that make his music what it is. So I think it's so important for us to explore different life experiences, to step out of the practice room and to explore the world, explore life, to be able to convey those emotions, to relate to those emotions, to be able to express them to an audience. And I think that's what's special about music, about art, that there are certain emotions or things that we experience that are a little harder to communicate through words. And sometimes when you just use the art form or a phrase of music and are able to convey that emotion, sometimes you don't need words to show a listener what you're really feeling or to communicate an emotion. I think that's so powerful when you can pass on that kind of emotional language and information without even having to say anything. And I think that's what's special about music. So, in order to do that, we would need to understand those inarticulable expressions and emotions and feelings and thoughts. So, going a little bit into what I enjoy exploring or my own interests, I love to spend time outside. I like to swim. I like to explore nature and to hike. I like to doodle and paint, and I love visual art a lot. And that's a way that I explore my curiosity. I also really love getting to talk with my loved ones, my family, my friends, and have meaningful conversations. And those are some of the ways that I like to explore time outside of music, outside of the practice room or performances or learning something new about music. And even if you were to think about how you can grow as a musician and learn more about the people who are writing the music you're playing, so the composers behind that music that you're learning, I think it's great to look into their biographies, their history, the time period that they were living, what was going on in the world, what other composers were doing, what influences that they had. Even that is a great immersive experience to explore their lives, to get to know what their music was really about. And you can't learn that in the practice room. You have to go out of it and do that kind of research and reading and exploration, which you can then bring into the practice room to understand how you want to make your musical decisions, how you want to phrase the music, how you want to communicate. Because understanding the composer and where this music is coming from in context is going to be the key to really unlocking what this music is about that you're playing. Going back to interests, I think that being a musician, it's also really important to continue to fuel that passion for music, even outside of a work environment. So if I'm just working on my deadlines and the music that I'm going to perform, or I need to learn for a particular purpose to share or for work in some way, I typically lose my fire and passion for music as I go along if that's the only thing I'm doing. So I need to invest in projects regularly that I'm doing just for myself. People like to call these passion projects, personal projects, you name it. It's just there so that you can continue to develop this love for music outside of a job setting, outside of needing to meet a certain deadline. And for me, that looks like meeting up regularly with friends to read chamber music. I think that by far is my favorite musical pastime to do in my free time, is reading chamber music with friends or colleagues. I love that you don't have to work on music for a performance. Sometimes you might explore different ways on how you might phrase as a group or musical decisions, but the purpose is just to have fun. It's not necessarily for work. So it doesn't feel like work, even if in a quartet setting I might be doing similar things in rehearsal. The purpose is totally different, so my feelings and my perspective on what I'm doing totally shifts my experience. I also love learning music just for myself sometimes, where I'm not working on it for a performance or a deadline. I'm just learning it for my own enjoyment. It doesn't mean that I won't ever perform it, but I like to sometimes just once in a while learn a piece just for myself, just to enjoy that music and to learn about the composer. And that can be really fun to do just as a personal growth sort of thing as a musician. So I hope some of these thoughts were helpful for us all as musicians. I think developing a musical voice and growing as a musician isn't just about becoming a better instrumentalist. It's not just about practicing more hours. I think a lot of it has to do with how we invest into the time we have in all of the areas of our life, in relationships that we have, in interests and hobbies that we love to do. Life is really beautiful and colorful, and I think music is meant to express that, so it's all the better for us to explore and be curious and look at the world around us and be adventurous about living. So I hope some of those thoughts were helpful for you.